Hi there! Today I will start making the rope channel for attaching the sail to the mast. But for that we need to start outside. Now I am going to use a router to make a track on the side of this piece of wood here. Now it's rather good, but I had to go over it once more. The first router track was not deep enough. So now I have done the first track on this side. And it looks quite alright, I think. I'm happy. And as you can see, the first pass don't get very good. Really uneven. But it will look better after the second one. Much better already, but you can see here that the first one doesn't go so well, doesn't go so deep, I would say. I smoothen the track with some light sanding. And a third round with the router on some spots. Now I cut out the groove track. I make 4 pieces with tracks in total. And level the thickness with the sander. They will later be glued together. And then it is easier if they are level. I also check that they are level in the length direction before I unclamp them and move inside. I cut strips to the length of the groove pieces. I will glue on the strips on 2 of the groove pieces. I remove some ugly stretches. The strips are about 5 mm thick. This will create the distance I need for the sail to exit. I also remove the excess. When you work with epoxy, you want to dry fit everything, as you have limited time to adjust if there is anything wrong with the fitting. So I clamp all strips to the pieces. Off camera, I have prepared the grooves with epoxy to make the surface smooth and watertight. Now I prepare the surface for gluing and remove all dust so that it will not contaminate the next step. If the dust is left, the surface will get coarse when laminated with epoxy. Then I mix up some thickened epoxy. I smear the epoxy on the side that I will put the strips on. And also on the receiving side of the strip. Some will be sucked into the wood, but when smeared on both sides, enough will be left to form a solid joining. Not much pressure is needed, but I want short distances between the pressure points. With many clamps there will be few gaps. Now the next. And the turning moment. When all is clamped, I will let it cure. 24 hours is enough. Now I have fastened this strip that will make up the distance between the two flanges of the sail rope track. I need to cut off the excess on the back side here before I proceed. So the next step is going outside. First some light sanding to clear off excess epoxy, but also to smoothen the groove. Then I flip the pieces and clear off the excess wood. Most is removed with the planer. And the last with the sander. I only want to remove the excess wood on the strip, not the piece with the groove. Thus I lean the sander a bit. Also the pieces without the strip get some sanding. I use a rolled sandpaper to follow the shape of the groove. The last important step before moving inside. The epoxy laminated groove is smooth, but it will get smoother with some polyurethane varnish. The varnish will also cure in the gap between the lid and the can. With some paper I will get rid of that problem. If you let the varnish pre-cure 30 minutes after mixing, it will float better and leave less curtains. While waiting I wipe off the kayak if there is some varnish left over. Then I varnish the groove and the exit side of the pieces. I make sure to also cover the side of the strip towards the groove. It will be hard to get to when the two pieces are glued together. Plenty is left over so the scratches on the kayak gets a full cover. The day after I sand the groove for the second coat. And the dust is removed. Before the second coat goes on. Now the polyurethane varnish has cured and it feels really smooth. So I think that the line and the sail will run smoothly through this channel. The next step is now to glue them together. One of these with the added strip together with one without a strip. A little like that. Leaving an opening where the sail can exit. I need to trim down the surface on this side that is going to be glued onto the other side. So there is no polyurethane varnish or anything in between when we glue it. This will be the backbone of the mast. So I also want it to be level and straight. Thus I have put these I have spread this, but they are not completely even yet. So I need to do some adjustments to the height. Now it feels level. Let's see if it is level as well. Yeah. I sand down the varnish with a 60 grit paper. Also on the strip side. With a rasp I make some coarse tracks in the epoxy. And then some vacuum. I try to put masking tape on the back side. The timber is a bit bent, so I need to put pressure on it. Here it's bent, so more pressure is needed. When all is made straight, I flip it over and remove the dry fitting clamps. I also make some spacers for keeping the exit gap. Small strips covered with polyethylene plastic that do not stick to epoxy. Now I glue the two pieces together with epoxy. I use thickened epoxy and drip it only into the gap. I move the spacer forward as I go. And remove the spacer when I'm done. Now I need a few clamps to get it straight and tight. I inspect that all is well before moving on. For the next part I use a little thinner epoxy. Making it easier to fill the gap. Then I can close this gap as well. The spacers are important to get it straight and tight. At some places I need to straighten vertical as well. After a few clamps I'm at the end. When all is clamped I will let it cure. The sail fits the grove channel. If you want to see how this mast turns out, you will have to wait for this video. I think this grove turned out quite well. Next time I will take a paddling break. Thank you for watching. That's all for this time.